Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures. As always, I am your game master and really, I'm going to stop saying solo player for these Sundered Isles games because you, my lovely guests, you, my lovely audience, know that I have a different guest every month. And this month, I have the amazing Maddy. Maddy, go ahead and introduce yourself to the folks.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm Maddy, my pronouns are they, them, and I am the host of the solo and duet TTRPG podcast, A Game of One's Own. And you can find me also on the anthology actual play podcast, Realms of Peril and Glory, playing lots of multiplayer RPGs as well.
Amazing. And we're very happy to have you here, Maddy. Tell me, what is your experience with pirates in media? Is there a particular, first of all, do you have any interest in pirates? And secondly, if so, do you have a particular piece of media related to pirates that kind of jumps out at you?
I absolutely love pirates. I've done sort of some historical reading about pirates. There's a book called Black Flags, Blue Waters that I read at least some of and very much enjoyed. And in terms of media, I think usually I enjoy pirates in tabletop games the most because I have the most kind of control over how to depict them. But the echoes of cool pirate stuff that I like to see in other media are Our Flag Means Death, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, Black Sails, lots of black things and flags.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
I also love kind of fantasy depictions of pirates because there are so many opportunities to kind of mold them to a better way of doing things than the realities of our world, unfortunately. So let's jump in to playing some pirates.
Awesome.
So the truths that we have already selected throughout the first few sessions of this campaign are piracy, which is apropos, and that is a burgeoning pirate nation wields great influence. The Marauder clans sail under the command of the Dread Court, a conclave of 8 veteran pirates whose shrewd tactics positioned this nation of cutthroats as a rising power. Once each year, the pirate fleets gather at a port called Flotsam, an artificial island built from the husks of captured and ruined ships, to pay homage to the court and to make plans. We've also covered magic. Magic is rare and mysterious. The Isles lie at the nexus of the new and the old, science and superstition, the known and the inexplicable. This collision of realities is a powerful but chaotic force, and rare folk can manipulate these unstable realities to cast spells and perform rites. In some cultures, mystics are respected. In others, they are feared or even outcast. We've also encountered beasts. Beasts are lost to myth, but the tales persist. For most, monstrous beasts are the stuff of fables, but a few who journey across trackless isles and unknown seas claim otherwise. Some even bear the scars of those alleged encounters. And then finally, we've encountered horrors. Put enough grog in a sailor and they'll tell you stories of doomed ships and ghostly visitations. It's nonsense. There's enough to fear amid the Isles without worrying about a fanciful tale of ghosts and ghouls. Nonetheless, sailors are a superstitious folk. On dark nights, when a dead calm falls over the sea, they keep a wary eye for ships that sail, heedless of the wind. So those are the truths that are defining our version of the Sundered Isles that we're playing through in this campaign. But today, Maddy, you are going to select our next truth that we're going to play through. And the options that we've got are the sundering, which is basically the idea that at some point in the past, some great cataclysm happened that created these Sundered Isles. We can also pursue relics. magical or powerful items of ancient worth. We can talk about the modern era and kind of define what the Sundered Isles look like right at this moment. Also in Ironsworn, iron vows are incredibly important. It's kind of the method by which we're going to track our progress on our quest for today. And so we could define how iron vows are sworn in the Sundered Isles. We could also talk about what navigation is like in the Sundered Isles, what kind of empires there might be, or what the religion of the Sundered Isles is like. Are any of those jumping out at you immediately?
I think I'm interested in the empires that exist.
Okay. So there are 3 options with the empires. Would you like to roll for them, or would you like me to read off the kind of brief synopsis and then you can just pick one?
I'm happy to roll. I'm happy to let the dice decide.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my preferred way to go because I feel like, it creates an interesting intermingling of a bunch of different types of truths as you go. So go ahead and roll a D100 and we'll see what we get.
I got just a 1.
Oh, exceptional. So that is the Sundered Isles are free from Imperial control for now. The empires have only a minor presence. Their outposts are isolated and pose little threat, but there are resources and riches to be exploited. Freedom is a fragile thing. Even now, Imperial agents are said to be among us, working in the shadows, planting the seeds of conquest. Now, before we jump into creating a character for you, I'll read off the quest starter that will be the guiding point of our session. So that is, a conflict between 2 nations is raging. Some suggest the war was sparked by Imperial agents, working behind the scenes to destabilize the region and open a path for colonization. Can you convince the leaders of these powers to abandon their fighting and focus on the true threat?
Interesting.
Yeah. I will note for this that we do have some factions that have been defined throughout the course of the last few sessions. And one of those is the Warforged Kharkiv Regency, which is an empire. So I think we don't necessarily need to define our empire unless you would like to define another empire, and there could be a couple of empires kind of vying for control of this region.
I think I'm happy to stick with the Warforged Kharkiv Regency. Maybe they just have tensions with the local population.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Regency, I mean, we've got some sort of definitions for them here, but we've really, in our adventures so far, have only very sparsely kind of interacted with them. So there's still a lot of room there to define what the Regency is like. Some of the other factions that are around is the Awakened Hammers, which is an organization. We don't know a whole bunch about them, but they seem to be some sort of like scientific manufacturing group that quite possibly are trying to gather up mystical relics in order to kind of turn those mystical powers towards industry. There are the Gleaming Witches, which is an organization of mystics. There is the Forsworn Consort, which are a group of healers, but something's gone sour with them, and they are not necessarily interacting with them is not necessarily positive. And then there is the Dread Court, which is this pirate nation. So those are the factions that have been established so far. We can absolutely establish more as we go. But let's jump into creating a character. So typically when we're creating a character, I suggest, especially if somebody is new to Ironsworn, as you are, that we look at the personas as a way to jump in, because the personas give you 2 assets just right off the bat that kind of work together to fulfill that persona, that archetype. And assets are the way that our character has like special abilities or, is able to improve their results on certain roles. So for instance, my character, who is Caspian Silver, also known as Powder Keg, captain of the Kiss of Death, is a duelist. So I get certain bonuses when I challenge a single foe in combat. He's also a sorcerer, so he gets certain bonuses to create mystical effects. And those are both assets. So having a look at the personas, is anything jumping out at you right away?
I think I am intrigued by the lycanthrope. Partially because it seems that people don't really believe in beasts in this particular world. So it might behoove my character to hide my true identity.
I don't know what I was expecting, but it was not lycanthrope. That is amazing. So we've got outcast, which when your supply is reduced to 0, and supply represents your resources, the equipment that you carry, all of those things. And you can reduce your supply as a consequence for rolls when you get a weak hit or a miss. Also, sometimes there will be some rolls where you will have to reduce your supply in order to gain certain progress in various ways. So you can, when your supply is reduced to 0, you can suffer as minus supply as minus momentum. Momentum is a resource that you can build up throughout the course of a session to then spend to overcome a miss or a weak hit. So with the outcast, you can roll plus wits. On a strong hit, you manage to scrape by and take +1 supply. On a weak hit, you may suffer -2 momentum in exchange for +1 supply. So really, the outcast is all about, you are able to scrounge for resources regardless of the kind of the circumstances that you find yourself in.
Nice.
With the shape changer, you have an alternate form and a trigger that sparks the transformation. If you encounter or activate the trigger, face danger, roll plus health to hasten, endure, or resist the transformation. Which I think is really cool because it gives you the option to either you can lean in or you can try to fight it. When you make a move in your alternate form, roll an extra action die. That's cool. If the move is true to your alternate form's nature, keep the highest as your action die value. If it is contrary, keep the lowest. To willingly return to your normal form, lose momentum -2. That's really cool. So what do you think the form of your lycanthropy takes?
I think that it's a walrus. Because I'm trying to think of something sea-based, but that is also dangerous. And I feel like the tusks could be an asset in a fight, but also a bit ostentatious and draw attention to you when you don't necessarily want attention drawn to you.
Absolutely. I love it. What do you think the trigger is that triggers your transformation?
I think when my character gets angry.
All right. So with your character, you have 5 stats. You've got edge, heart, iron, shadow, and wits. Edge can be considered sort of like dexterity and, fluidity of movement. Heart is both kind of courage and also social graces. Iron is strength, both of body and will. Shadow is kind of cunning and also sneakiness. And wits is kind of intellect and ability to plan and ability to divine things. So with Ironsworn, you get a 3, 2 2s, and 2 1s to place into your assets. So for instance, with my character Caspian, I have an edge of 1, a heart of 3, an iron of 2, a shadow of 1, and a wits of 2. Because I envision Caspian as being on the kind of bulkier side, stronger. He's not necessarily fast or agile, but he has a commanding presence, and he's kind of strong-willed, and he's intelligent. Now, the thing to remember is even if you have a 1 in a stat, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're bad at that thing. It's just you're better at other things. So with that in mind, kind of what are you feeling for your stat array?
I think that considering I'm a were-walrus, I don't think I'm very agile either.
Okay.
So I think probably edge and shadow will also be 1s. but I think that iron will probably be my highest stat.
All right.
And then the others will be 2s.
Perfect. There is a table that you can roll on if you would like to roll up a backstory, or you can just kind of come up with one. It doesn't necessarily, I think, matter much in this case, because oftentimes in Ironsworn, you're tying your backstory into your background vow. But so we're just playing this one session. Background vow is not going to come into effect all that much. But if you'd like to roll on it, or if you have kind of a quick idea for what your background might be, let's do it.
I'm happy to roll and see what comes up.
All right. So again, it'll be a D100. Most of the Oracle rolls in Ironsworn are a D100. And then there is an option where we can roll an additional D10. Rules is written, if it's a 10, it is a cursed result. But my other guests and I have been playing where if it comes up as an odd number on a D10, so it's basically like a 50-50 of getting a cursed result, if you want.
Cool. I've got a 47.
47. All right. So it is home occupied by an enemy faction is the uncursed result. Whereas the cursed result would be home destroyed by a monstrous beast.
Yeah, I'll roll to see if I get an odd or an even. I got 1, so...
Okay, so home destroyed by a monstrous beast.
I feel like it was the werewolrus that turned me that destroyed my home, so I probably have...
That sounds right to me.
...complicated feelings about my identity.
Absolutely. All right, let's do a couple of quick rolls on some oracles. There is a table of names, if you'd like to roll on that. Or if you have a name, again, it's entirely up to you. If you have an idea for something, please feel free to just go with that. Otherwise, there are oracles for literally everything.
Sweet. I think I'm going to roll to see what my name is. 67.
67 is Fitz, Burke, or Samira Osman are the options along 67. And then there's also a moniker of Scupper.
Ooh, yeah, I'll go with Samira Osman, and yeah, I'll keep Scupper as a moniker.
And then what are Samira's pronouns?
I'll say she, they.
And then there is a table, because as I mentioned, there is a table for everything. You can roll on kind of descriptions, first look details, and trademark accessories, trademark weapons. Just kind of depends on how much you want the dice to kind of flesh out the character.
I think that in terms of appearance, Samira's probably very sturdy, very muscular, but also has like a decent covering of fat to deal with the cold weather, as a walrus does. I think her hair would be a kind of silvery grey black.
Awesome. Would you like to roll on a trademark accessory and weapon?
I think a trademark accessory would probably be a tusk on a necklace.
Is that the tusk of the were-walrus that turned them?
Very possibly. I don't think they'd ever confirm or deny, but okay. I think one can surmise that. And then a weapon. I think a hand axe.
Amazing. I think my final question before we jump into our session here is Samira a like permanent member of the Kiss of Death? Like have they always been kind of in the background of these adventures kind of going on? Or is this someone who has just kind of recently come aboard for the purpose of our quest today?
I'm happy for Samira to have been kind of keeping to herself on the crew, trying not to cause any fuss, but then for whatever reason this quest kind of got their attention and they were like, I need to be involved with this.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll go back to our quest starter, which I'll read again. A conflict between two nations is raging. Some suggest the war was sparked by Imperial agents, working behind the scenes to destabilize the region and open a path for colonization. Can you convince the leaders of these powers to abandon their fighting and focus on the true threat? So I think we've decided that the Regency are the empire that is the threat here. Are the two factions that are fighting, are they factions that already exist, or should we define one or both of those factions?
I'm happy for them to be factions that already exist.
Okay. So let's say the Dread Court is one, because I feel like they are a faction that Caspian has some involvement in. And so that could be kind of our starting point to get into this. That we are on a mission to try and stop the Dread Court and another group from kind of fighting when there are greater threats out there. So do you feel like you want to go industry or magic for our other faction?
How about the Gleaming Witches? I think that would be interesting.
Awesome. So we've got the Gleaming Witches and the Dread Court. They are in conflict for some reason. Do you think that we know like what sparked the conflict?
Maybe one of the Dread Court turned up dead and there was some indication that it was a magical death. And the Gleaming Witches are trying to prove that they're innocent.
I like that a lot. The way that Ironsworn works and the way that we're going to play this is we, as characters, swear on iron to fulfill some quest. So our mission here is to convince the leaders of these powers to abandon their fighting and focus on the true threat. And I think because of that detail that you just provided, it seems to me that instead of us kind of trying to sit down with the leaders and kind of have this conference, it almost seems as though we are on the trail of some evidence that proves that the Regency are the ones that actually assassinated the pirate captain of the Dread Court.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense to me.
Cool. So let's go ahead and create our track. The way that vows work in Ironsworn is we have a track with 10 boxes. As we make rolls, as we gain progress in our quest, we're going to mark off those boxes. And at a point that feels narratively appropriate, and or when our 2 hours is up, we are going to roll to fulfill the vow. The way that the progress tracks work is by essentially acting as your action score. So if you can fill those boxes up as much as you can, then you're rolling the 2d10, which are your challenge dice, against that progress number. And if the challenge dice are lower than the progress number, you get a strong hit and you get everything that you want out of fulfilling that vow. If it's one is higher, one is lower, that's a weak hit, and it's kind of a mixed results. And then if both are higher than your progress, it's a miss, and we get to do some interesting and fun narrative wrapping things up. The way that progress is tracked with these boxes is that there are different ranks for a vow. There's troublesome, there's dangerous, formidable, extreme, and epic. I'm going to say for our purposes, extreme and epic are pretty much off the table because those would take a long time to fulfill. Mm-hmm. The way that filling boxes of progress works is if it's a formidable vow, when you get progress, which is any sort of significant information or you overcome a significant obstacle, you can mark one box on that 10-box track. If it's dangerous, you would mark 2 boxes on that 10-box track. And then if it's troublesome, you would mark 3 boxes. So a troublesome vow you can get through in just a couple of pieces of progress. Whereas formidable, it takes a little bit more to kind of get through. So with that idea of troublesome, dangerous, or formidable, I think our vow here is to discover evidence that the Regency assassinated the pirate captain. Does that feel like formidable or dangerous? I feel like troublesome is probably too easy for, again, our purposes.
Yeah,
So
I think
feel
dangerous works.
Dangerous works? All right. The question that I have coming off of that is, because I like to let my guests kind of, have the spotlight as far as the impetus behind these adventures. Do you think that while Samira is part of the Kiss of Death's crew, she might have had some sort of connection with the pirate captain who was killed, something that would kind of drive her to kind of step forward and say, I want to help out on solving this?
Yeah, I think either that or a connection to the Gleaming Witches to make sure that they're not falsely accused. I think both of those could be interesting.
Which do you prefer?
I think that maybe an ex-romantic interest of Samira's is the one who is accused of killing the pirate captain. And while things are complicated between them, she still doesn't want to see her falsely accused or executed, and is quite keen to make sure that doesn't happen.
That is a great motivation for doing that. And it is going to spark off our first roll, which is to swear an iron vow. So when you swear to complete a quest, write your vow, which we've done, give it a rank, which we've also done, and then roll plus heart. If you swear this vow to a connection, add +1. If you share a bond, add +2. Based on the way that you have described this relationship, actually, let's give. Why don't you roll a D100? Let's give this Gleaming Witch member a name.
I got a 92.
Kahu or Voldar?
Voldar. Yeah, Voldar sounds cool.
So I think that you have probably sworn this oath to Voldar. And because of that, you can take +1, because I'm assuming that she's a connection.
Nice, yes.
And I'll say since she's an X, that probably you don't have a bond anymore. So we'll just leave it at that +1.
Yeah, that works.
So roll your D6 and add +1 and then plus your heart, and then compare that against the 2 D10s that you roll.
I got a 7 with the D6 and the bonuses. And then I rolled an 8 and a 4 on my D10s.
Wonderful. So that is a weak hit, which I feel like a weak hit on a vow is almost the ideal option, because it says, you're determined, but begin your quest with more questions than answers. Take +1 momentum and envision what you do to find a path forward. So your momentum track starts at 2. That's one of the nice things, is like it represents our kind of forward momentum in our quest and is a resource that we can then spend. So we always start at 2. And then when we burn our momentum, which we'll talk about when we get to that point, it resets to 2. So you never go back to 0 unless you're very injured and have a bunch of different impacts on you. So your momentum will go up to 3. The other thing about Ironsworn is that we don't share momentum tracks. And so if you get a success that gives you momentum, I don't get anything off of that. I've got to roll my own dice to gain my own momentum, with one notable exception, which is there is a move called Aid an Ally. And that essentially means that when you want to roll that, you roll, but you can give the benefits of your roll to an ally.
Okay.
You have sworn this vow to Voldar. It seems like maybe she's being held on Flotsam, which is the Dread Court kind of home base.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're starting off from. And I think because we have more questions than answers, we don't necessarily have a clear path forward of, okay, it's definitely this thing, this thread that we need to pull at in order to find this evidence that we're looking for. So I am curious, and this is one of my favorite things to do, if we roll on our action and theme oracles, which are basically one-word prompts that we can then use to interpret, I'm wondering if we can get a sense of like what Voldar tells you that kind of gives us an idea of where we're going, but also there's something about what she tells us that doesn't quite match what's going on. And so we have to figure that out a little bit.
That sounds good, yeah.
Go ahead and roll one set of percentile dice. I will roll the other set, and we'll put our words together.
I just got 4.
A 4, which is effect, and I got 69, which is prophecy. Effect, prophecy.
Ooh.
So this could be something that she tells us. Maybe she's telling us about a prophecy, or maybe there is some prophecy that this pirate captain being assassinated fulfills some like gleaming witch prophecy. What do you think? Is there anything jumping out at you on those prompts?
I think that one idea that came to mind is that there was a prophecy that a witch should be at a certain place at a certain time for some positive effect, but instead of a positive effect, she got blamed for assassination instead.
Fascinating. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so that definitely does not give us any answers as to why or who could possibly have been the real assassin. But I think what it does is it gives us a starting place that maybe we can go and investigate that spot. And do we think that spot was here on Flotsam, or do we think it was somewhere else that this assassination happened and then they just brought Voldar back to Flotsam for trial and, execution?
I think it would probably make sense to be on Flotsam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Flotsam is an artificial island built from the husks of captured and ruined ships. So it's not a land mass. It is this mass of planks and ships, and like the wood creaks as the sea kind of laps against it. But it is this massive city, essentially, that just floats on the sea. And these pirate fleets come and go from it. Maybe there was an event going on in Flotsam. Maybe some sort of celebration. And that was the reason why the 8 pirate captains of the Dread Court were all gathered together. This celebration kind of went on for a couple of days. And it was on the deck of one of these floating ships where this pirate captain who was assassinated was celebrating with members of his crew when the assassination occurred. Caspian and Samira can go to that place and start kind of asking questions of the people who were there in investigator fashion, trying to figure out if there was anything unusual that happened other than, this assassination.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can both roll gather information, or, and I think this is probably more interesting, I will roll secure an advantage, which is going to essentially be our aid and ally. So I'm going to roll to attempt to boost your gathering of information. And I'm going to do that by being sociable and kind of buying some drinks for the pirates who are kind of still hanging around this space. And I think it's interesting because Flotsam is kind of this burgeoning nation. And so there aren't just pirates here. Like there are families, there are workers, there's industry happening. So there's a wide range. It is a city in all sense. So I'm going to roll plus my heart. So I've got a 5 for my action score, a 1 and a 9 on the challenge dice. So that is a weak hit. So I can give you either +2 momentum, or I can give you +1 to your next move. I feel like the +1 to your next move makes the most sense because we're gathering this information. This is a short-term benefit. So Caspian goes around and is, spreading some money around, buying drinks, chatting with people. And how is Samira kind of coming along and trying to glean some additional information from this area?
I think probably trying to listen in and look carefully at people's expressions to make sure that they're telling the truth. If anyone's looking shifty, maybe take that information less at face value, and maybe also looking around the area for any sort of physical clues that may have been left behind by an assassin.
Excellent. So go ahead and roll plus wits, which is going to be +2, +1 for my assistants, and let's see what happens.
I got a 7. A 10 and a 4, so another weak hit.
So information provides new insight, but also complicates your quest. Envision what you discover, then take +1 momentum. What could we glean from this that provides insight, but also complicates our quest? Do you have an idea for that, or do we want to roll on an oracle?
Yeah, let's roll to see.
Let's roll the action and theme again.
67.
67 is oppose, and 83 is spirit. Oppose, spirit. I feel like spirit immediately makes me think of the Gleaming Witches for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But that seems like everybody here is probably opposed to the Gleaming Witches. So maybe spirit means something else in this case. Maybe it's the spirit of this place, that kind of independent pirate nation. What do you think, Maddy?
I'm wondering if the spirit of this place manifests as a door that's usually locked suddenly swings open, and then there's something inside. Maybe something that links to a prominent member of the Regency, but the fact that this is such a prominent member of the Regency complicates the quest, because it's like, how on earth are we going to implicate this influential person in this assassination?
Yeah, I think that's amazing. So if we look at the Regency, we know that their leadership is a military leader. Their tactics, they like to hoard relics. They also like to collude with criminal factions, which, could be an interesting connection to a group of pirates. There is a religious schism that is causing dissent, bears a dreadful sigil or mark.
Maybe there's some kind of contract with this sigil on it.
Ooh. Okay. So this section of Flotsam is an old Regency frigate that was abandoned at some point and or taken by the pirates. And it is this notable space here on Flotsam because the door has always been locked, mystically so. They've made attempts to batter it down. They've made attempts to break the lock, and all of those attempts have been foiled by whatever power protects that area.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this time, as Samira is exploring, that door opens. Maybe even as you're drawing close. What do you see inside of it?
I think maybe it's the captain's quarters of the old frigate, and on the desk there is this contract that is sort of water damaged, but I can see that there is this dreadful sigil of the Regency on it.
So we know that we need to pursue this. Maybe the captain of this ship famously survived the loss of it and has since become the leader of the Regency. And we should give that captain a name. That feels appropriate. Or maybe just a moniker. Let's just give him a moniker.
53.
Quill is the moniker. Interesting. Lord Quill. So we have this idea now that this is connected to Quill. And also looking at the Regency details, their cursed goal is to bring about an unspeakable prophecy. I wonder if there's the like positive prophecy of the Gleaming Witches of like, be in this place at the right time and something good will happen. And there's almost a parallel prophecy that is part of this document that you can kind of like pick out the pieces of that almost spells out the events that happened.
Yeah.
But it's not enough, right? It's not enough to prove that Voldar is innocent.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to do more. But I think we can mark our first box of progress because we've got some ideas of what is happening here. The question is, what are our next steps?
Yeah, is there anyone on Flotsam who was there when this ship was kind of added to the city?
That's a great question. We should ask the Oracle. Yes, no, Oracle. Pretty simple. Do we think that it is a small chance, which would be 10 or less on a D100? Is it unlikely, which is 25 or less? If it's 50-50, pretty obvious, 50 or less. Likely, 75 or less, or almost a sure thing, which would be 90 or less. I think it's probably likely.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's likely. If this captain is still alive and sort of hell and hearty enough to lead a whole regency.
Yeah. So go ahead and roll D100. And if it's 75 or less, then the answer is yes. There is somebody here on Flotsam who was there at the taking of the ship.
I think I got 100.
Ooh, okay. So that's a no. So there isn't anyone here who was part of that. And maybe that in and of itself is notable. Is it like some sort of curse where all of the crew that captured this frigate have since died? Or is it that maybe there's still like someone is still alive, but they left Flotsam, long ago, trying to essentially escape this curse?
Yeah, I think I like the second option. And yeah.
Okay. Well, let's I'm going to roll and just give a quick name to this person because I think we would find that out.
Mm-hmm.
So Florian Finn is maybe Florian was the like quartermaster on the ship that took this Regency frigate, and they pieced out after a bunch of their crewmates started turning up dead.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can probably try to gather some more information to figure out where Florian might have gone. I'll go ahead and roll my wits and see if Caspian has that knowledge. He does not have that knowledge. That is a 7 on the action score, a 7 and an 8 on the challenge dice for a miss.
Oof.
So your investigation unearths a dire threat or reveals an unwelcome truth that undermines your quest. Dire threat or unwelcome truth related to Florian Finn.
Maybe he did leave, but then also turned up dead much later.
I think that's right. But I also think that where he turned up dead is important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably a port that is kind of known as a Regency settlement.
Yeah.
So that's the unwelcome truth, is that we have to go there and look around and probably get into trouble ourselves. As part of a miss, I have to pay the price. And I think that I'm going to represent that as marking down my supplies. I think that is just Caspian. Basically, he spends a bunch of money asking a bunch of people a lot of questions and doesn't come away with a whole lot of information. But we do now kind of have this idea of where we need to go. And I think we can do a quick roll on our settlement oracle to get a sense of what this place is like. So why don't you give me a D100, and I'm going to say that this settlement is probably in the Myriads, which is kind of represents the central seas. So definitely a more populated area of the Sundered Isles.
I got a 39.
39 is a town, so a typical population of hundreds. So it's not a like massive city or anything like that, but it is definitely a there are people there. And then 92 for our settlement aesthetics, ramshackle, haphazard structures using scavenged or repurposed materials. So that's interesting. And give me one more roll. We'll just come up with a quick name for the settlement.
75.
75 is Starfall. Pretty sure I've had a Starfall already. Let's flip it around and do 57 instead of 75 and call it Northbridge.
Cool.
So Northbridge is this Regency settlement. It's kind of ramshackle. So we know that based on our truth that the Empire is not like super active in the area. So maybe there's a garrison of Regency troops here, but it's not like it is a bustling port of Regency activity.
Mm-hmm.
So we gather all of that information and we come to that realization. And I think we see this scene of Caspian and Samira making their way back to the ship. And Caspian says, well, it seems as though we'll have to go further afield to gain these answers, but I know that we will find proof to free your friend.
Do you think that Samira has shown her walrus side to Caspian, or whether Caspian doesn't know?
That is a great question. I don't know. I could go either way with it, because I could, Caspian is a sorcerer, and so his crew is already kind of made up of people who are a little bit more accustomed to weird and occult goings on. And so it's possible that Samira would feel comfortable enough to reveal that, but also it's a pretty hefty secret to pass on to someone.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you feeling about it?
I think if the crew is already pretty weird, I think possibly the inciting incident for Samira joining the crew was maybe she got a bit cross and showed a bit of walrus in a situation, and Caspian and or other members of the crew kind of came to her aid, and it became clear that she needed a job and there was a job available.
I love it. Yeah. Now let's go with that.
So yeah, in that case, Samira would say, I'm going to have to keep myself on a tight leash to make sure I don't reveal anything that I don't want to reveal.
Indeed. Although it can have certain advantages when attempting to pull information from individuals who might otherwise be reluctant.
That's true.
Something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So we return to the Kiss of Death and we set sail for Northbridge. And there is a move called Set a Course. So when you travel a known route through perilous seas, across hazardous terrain, or within a mysterious site, roll plus supply. So we are going to travel across the sea, but I think it's the path to Northbridge is known. Mm-hmm. We have charts that we can chart the course without any problems. So let's roll plus our hold of 5. That is a strong hit, which is excellent. So reach your destination. The situation there favors us. I would love for you to describe our approach to Northbridge.
I think that it is just an idyllic journey, and the sun kind of glitters off the sea, and perhaps even we see a school of dolphins swimming alongside the ship, and then maybe it's slightly anticlimactic when we arrive and it's this ramshackle small town that's not got a huge amount going for it. But at least the journey there was pleasant.
Yeah, for once, we didn't get hit by some nasty storm or shoals of man-eating, sharks or whatever. It was just pleasant. The situation here favors us. So I think when we arrive, we can see that there is a Regency fort and there's a flag flying above, but there aren't any Regency naval ships in the harbor or within sight. And so I think we feel a little bit more comfortable sailing into the harbor than we might if there was some Regency military ships bopping about. So we arrive on the docks of Northbridge, and it's a small town. It's ramshackle, but there's still there's some coming and going. So I think there are a few people on the dock, and maybe there is a brief moment where there's some question as to, what our business is here. And we, as I think, having the experience of traveling the seas and not always wanting to reveal ourselves as part of the Dread Court, we have kind of disguised ourselves as a merchant crew bringing some goods to this small town. And we make our way through into the town itself. And I feel like we're doing it a lot, but it also feels like we're kind of on an investigation here. So it feels like this is an opportunity for another gather information as we are trying to find out more about Florian and where he died and how he died.
Yep.
I would say feel free to go ahead and roll that plus wits.
And it was a 6 and 2 10s, so a miss for me.
A miss with 2 10s, which is a match, which anytime you get a match, it's either a great opportunity or a great complication.
Oof.
So again, on a miss, investigation unearths a dire threat or reveals an unwelcome truth that undermines our quest. Maddy, I have a strange inkling that Quill is here.
Ooh.
We didn't see any Regency ships out in the harbor, but they're around, and Lord Quill is here. And so I think as we're walking through the streets, there's more of a presence of Regency soldiers than we expected, given our kind of welcome at the docks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question I have is, because there are so many of these Regency soldiers, do they recognize us as crew of a Dread Court ship? Seems like that would be a pretty bad thing to be identified as right now.
Yeah, I think it's possibly likely, especially if they're a bureaucratic Regency that has a lot of good records, and they can look up, this ship name, this correspond. We can't really change the ship name very easily.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, then let's roll. I'll go ahead and roll. We'll say it is likely. So 75 or less will be a yes. 39. What does this look like? We're walking through the streets and some Regency soldiers recognize us. And this is a, miss with about as bad a complication as it can get. So feel free to go nuts.
Ooh, I think that they probably antagonize us, and then Samira starts to feel the urge to transform.
Ooh, there's a roll for this. So you have to face danger plus your health, which is good because your health is at 5 right now. So you're going to roll your d6, add 5. The thing to note about Ironsworn is that you cannot go above a 10 on your action score. So there is always the possibility that you could get a 10 on your action score, two tens on the challenge dice and miss.
Mm.
So go ahead and roll that, and we'll see what happens.
I think bizarrely that happened. I rolled a 5 on my action die for a 10, and then rolled 2 10s on my d10s.
Oh no. Is that two tens twice in a row?
Yeah, I think I need to switch up my dice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that probably means that you transform, right? Like that's, yeah. I mean, there's no bones about it here. So we're in the middle of the street, and Samira goes from being Samira to werewalrus as this small group of soldiers is trying to antagonize us. How do you think they react?
It's either kill it quickly, or it's, oh god, a beast. We don't know how to deal with this, run away. Yeah.
And I think either option is interesting. So let's just say it's 50-50. And 50 or less, it will be that they're like, kill it. Because, they were already trying to goad us into a fight. And like, this might be a surprise, but I think they still outnumber us and are probably like, we can take care of this thing, whatever it is.
91.
Okay. So they run. I guess the question is, do we let them? Like, are we going to try and stop them from getting away so as to not like spread this information? Or are we going in the opposite direction?
I think my instinct would be to stop them.
Yeah, I think Caspian's is as well. So they turn to run. Caspian, I think, is going to throw a sidelong glance at where Samira and draws his saber out and kind of starts to call up some magic. And there is a wonderful move called Battle, because I don't think that we need to get really granular with this combat. It happens in a blur.
Mm-hmm.
So when you fight a battle and it happens in a blur, envision your objective and roll. If you primarily fight at range, roll plus edge. Fight depending on your courage, allies, or companions, roll plus heart. Fight in close to overpower your foe, roll plus iron. Use trickery to befuddle your foe, roll plus shadow. Or use careful tactics to outsmart your foe, roll plus wits. I feel like we're probably both kind of in close, because they were like right up in our faces. This transformation happens. They're like, oh no, turn to run, and it is just utter chaos. So let's both roll plus iron. And because you are in your form, go ahead and roll 2d6s. And I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like this is working in tandem with your form rather than trying to do something against it.
Yeah.
So take the higher of the two.
That's a 9 for my action roll.
Excellent. It's pretty good. Just don't roll 2 10s.
That's an 8 and a 9 on my challenge dice. So yeah, that is a weak hit.
All right. I also have a weak hit with 7 for my action score, 8 and a 4 for my challenge dice. So we both achieve our objective, which is to stop them from running away from us, but not without cost. Pay the price. Now, the great thing about pay the price in Ironsworn is you are almost never required to take mechanical penalties as part of pay the price, but you can. And so I feel like I'm going to just knock my health down 1 as a representation of like Caspian takes a couple of hits as we're dispatching these Regency guards. But you can choose to take a mechanical penalty, or if there is some narrative consequence for you tearing apart Regency guards in your walrus form, go for that.
I think I think it'd be interesting for Samira to feel very guilty about this. And like when she emerges from her transformation into her human form, she's like, oh, what did I do? And even though she has a memory of it, it almost feels like this may be a coping mechanism. It feels like someone else was doing that.
Is it more beneficial in this moment for you to lose your form as part of that kind of guilt? Because there's a mechanic within the asset where you can willingly return to your normal form by losing 2 momentum. Because this is a consequence, if it is more advantageous for you to be back in your normal form, like that doesn't feel right without spending that, that mechanical cost. But if it's more like, if it would be more advantageous for you to remain in your were-walrus form, then that would make sense as a complication that you kind of get shunted out of your form back into your human form as that complication. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'm happy to lose the momentum. I think that it probably would be better to not be a walrus in this town.
Seems right.
But but it's there's still a cost to it.
Now we're standing in the middle of this street, and there are these Regency guards who are laying on the ground. Some of them are probably groaning, suffering from whatever wounds that we unleashed upon them. And you come back to yourself. And I think Caspian standing next to you is like, are you all right?
No, but I will be.
Right. Well, we should get off the street.
Lead the way.
All right. For this, I'm just going to roll face danger. Unfortunately, plus edge, because I think the idea here is there probably this commotion was seen or heard by others. And so we are trying to get out of view fast enough that we can kind of slip away and maybe disguise ourselves and continue our task. But neither of us is very quick or agile. So we'll see how this goes. Okay. It's a weak hit. So with a weak hit, we succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move. -1. I think I'm going to lose 1 of my momentum for that, because I think we duck down an alleyway, and we kind of climb up a set of stairs that are outside of this building, and then climb up onto the roof, and then, run across a couple of roofs and then drop down. And we sort of find a spot that we can hide in long enough that it kind of dies down in this immediate area so that they think that we escaped, and they're kind of expanding their search further out. But it slows us down that we lose that little bit of momentum as a result.
Excellent.
So here we are. We are now hunted in Northbridge. We still have no idea what happened with Florian. And there are a lot more Regency guards here than we expected. Now, a sane, intelligent crew would decide that it's probably not wise to continue and would just try to get out. But we can't do that. We've got a vow that we've sworn. We're not oath breakers. So what's our next step?
Despite the fact that neither of us are very sneaky, my instinct would be to try and sneak into the garrison and look at their documents and see if they have any written evidence of any dodgy dealings. Amazing.
I love that we're driving ourselves towards a massive fight. So I would say go ahead and roll your own face danger plus shadow, and we'll let that ride for both of us.
Oh, I got a 2, and then a 4 and a 9.
Okay. All right. Well, so on a miss, you fail, or a momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events. Pay the price. So which do you think it is? Do you think that we just straight up cannot get into the garrison? Or do you think we get into the garrison, but maybe they're expecting us?
Yeah, I think we probably get in and then are met with a strong resistance.
Yeah. So what does that look like? What is paint the picture for us. Paint the scene for us as we're creeping in.
I think, yeah, we managed to get in through a window, creeping along the corridors, trying to look for the door to the archives or to some kind of office, and we turn the wrong corner and are directly in the bunks, and there are a bunch of sleeping guards there, and perhaps Samira knocks into something and they all wake up.
As they're kind of like coming to consciousness and, they see us and there's like scrambling out of their bunks. I guess the question again is, are we running or are we waiting in while there is this moment of confusion? And like, how bloody do we want this to get?
I think Samira would still be kind of on task and maybe try to take advantage of this kind of moment of bleariness from the guards and try and find the room that has the information.
Okay. I'm going to attempt to aid you in this. And to do so, I'm going to secure an advantage and I'm going to use my sorcerer asset. And what this represents is Caspian basically raises his hand and like snaps his finger, and all the lights in this room just wink out. And then we go, and hopefully you will be able to find the room that we're looking for. I'm going to roll plus spirit, which is +5. So here's hoping. Strong hit.
Nice.
So on a strong hit, I get a momentum. And you get 2 momentum, and you get a +1 to your next move.
Sweet.
Which I think should be face danger in this case.
Cool.
Because we are reacting to an imminent threat. But I think you could do it plus wits, if it's like expertise, focus, or observation. Like you see the room on the other side. It could be, resolve. Like you mentioned that Samira is very focused and on task. So it could be plus heart. There's a bunch of different ways to kind of approach this narratively.
Cool. I think I'll go wits. That's an 8. And then a 9 and a 3, so a weak hit.
Always with the weak hits. It's a thing. So we succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move. Just -1. So this is -1 to a track. So it could be your momentum, could be health or spirit. It could also be supply.
I think perhaps Samira takes a stray shot from one of the guards as they're kind of rolling out of bed, grabbing a musket or something.
Yeah. Perfect. So it's just like this report goes off. Maybe it's even as the lights flicker out, and there's just this like report of a pistol going off in the room, and like there's this flash, and we are in motion across the room, kind of like running through this gauntlet of bleary-eyed Regency soldiers as we see that there's a door on the other side of the room that looks like it kind of, or like a passage on the other side of the room. And we can see like a door on the other side that looks like it would lead to the archives. So we kind of barrel through and we make our way through that door and down another corridor. And I think we can actually mark some progress here.
Nice.
Because yeah, we're getting there. So we charge forward through this corridor. They're, I think, confused behind us. So maybe they're going to split off into groups to search for us. So there are some that are going to come down this hall, but I think we were able to get across in the darkness and open the door like somewhat quietly there was shouting and just a commotion coming from the barracks. So we're able to like slip down this hallway, and we're running towards the archives. I don't know if there is any other threat that's kind of between us. So maybe this is a good opportunity to gather some information as we arrive in the archive, and maybe there's even, a soldier in there, and we kind of like come charging in, and he like confusedly turns around and just like clobber him over the head. He's like, pardon me, we've got some research to do. And let's roll plus wits to gather information. And this will kind of, I think, determine if we find the information we're looking for, if it takes us a little bit longer than we'd like and we get some complication, or if like we just don't find anything.
Yeah. I got a 4 versus a 1 and a 2. So
yes,
a strong
excellent
hit on a terrible roll.
It is great when it happens. It feels so good. So on a strong hit, you discover something helpful and specific. The path you must follow or action you must take to make progress is made clear. Envision what you learn and then take +2 momentum. So you're up to 6 momentum, which is great because, again, momentum is something that you can burn to negate or basically like replace your action die against your challenge dice. So if, for instance, you rolled like a 2 on your action score, but you had like a 4 and a 5 on your challenge dice, you could burn that 6 momentum to turn it into a strong hit instead of a miss. Mm-hmm. So it's a nice resource to have.
Nice.
So we discover something helpful and specific. What is that? What is that piece of information that kind of puts some of the pieces together for us?
Possibly a letter from Lord Quill to the leader of this garrison, saying that the pirate captain who was assassinated is a threat and needs to be dealt with. So like there's a clear link between, the Regency wanted this guy dead. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And that is a couple more boxes of progress.
Nice.
Do we feel like that is enough evidence that it would get Voldar acquitted from the Dread Court? Or do we need to push a little bit further to get a little bit more information?
I think Samira's instinct would be to, like, this is probably enough that we could make a good argument, and is wary of staying away from Flotsam for too long in case they decide to execute Voldar while we're not there.
Yeah. So I think our next step is we've got to get out of here. We got to get back to our ship.
Yeah.
How are we getting out? Let's start there, and then let's remember fiction first, and then and then we can pick out which move is triggered from that. How are we going to escape the garrison, which is now roused? I mean, that like they know that something's up, and we have now made chaos in the town and in the garrison. Next up is the docks. We'll make just a whole bunch of ruckus in the docks. So how are we getting out of this garrison?
I had an idea of Samira just sort of barricading the door into the archive, and then there being a window that we could get out of.
Does that window possibly overlook the sea?
Very possibly.
All right, cool. So let's barricade the door. I think that is probably with iron. Like that makes sense to me, of trying to like pile stuff up against the door. And I will once again attempt to assist you because I've got some iron. Weak hit, so you can either take 2 momentum or +1 on your next move.
I'll take a +1.
Yeah.
That's a weak hit.
A weak hit? Okay. So we succeed, but not without cost. Make a suffer move at -1. So what does that look like? Like, is there a physical cost? Is there a mental cost? Like, is it stressful as we're trying to like drag these like benches and stuff over and pile it up? Or does it literally just, it takes us extra time and we lose a little bit of momentum?
Yeah, I think momentum is probably what makes most sense to me.
Yep. So we'll just drop down I'm going to take that hit too, since I assisted with that. So we kind of are both slowed down a little bit as we're pulling these benches and whatnot over. And then we feel satisfied that the door is barricaded enough, and we rush across to the other side of the room where this window looks out, and there's definitely rocks down there, and the waves are kind of like crashing against these sometimes jagged rocks. And I think we probably need to make another face danger to see how we weather this jump.
Mm-hmm.
Question is can I talk myself into rolling plus heart? Because it's really just about resolve. I mean, he's just resolving to jump out that window and not hit the rocks. Or if, we should roll plus edge, which is probably more appropriate in the like physical act of trying to avoid dashing oneself upon the rocks. What do you think?
I think I was going to try and wangle Iron, sort of like with enough of a push off the edge of the cliff. I could sort of make a strong trajectory away from the rocks.
You know what? I'll buy that. So I will also do Iron.
I got a 5 and then a 5 and a 7 on my challenge dice.
And if we hadn't burnt that momentum, we could have turned that miss into a weak hit. So that is a miss. So you fail, or a momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events. Pay the price. And I have to say, I got a weak hit. So I successfully jumped and made it into the water. I'm going to take another hit to my health, because I think he does still, like, there's some rocks under the water that he didn't quite anticipate. And it's like he scrapes his leg on one of them, but he's in the water. The question is, did Samira jump, or did something happen that like prevented her from jumping? Is she still up in the garrison, or did something happen when she hit the water? Or like, what do you think? How do you want to pay this price?
Ooh, I think it would be fun if the guy that we knocked out when we arrived in the archives has woken up and taken me by surprise and like has me in a chokehold, preventing me from jumping. Okay.
So it's this like Caspian in very bad form as a captain goes out the window first. And Samira, you start to like get ready to jump, and then this individual like grabs you from behind, and there's a struggle. Like he's trying to choke you into unconsciousness, and you are certainly not going to let that happen. So how are you fighting back?
I think this pisses me off. I think I'm going walrus mode.
Okay. All right. So I love it. I don't think I've ever looked at the shape changer asset, and it is so cool. Like I just now want to create a shape changer. So if you encounter or activate the trigger, face danger, roll plus health. So, and I would say this is probably to hasten the transformation. So roll plus 4 on this.
That's an 8. And I got a 7 and an 8, so a weak hit.
A weak hit. Okay. So you are successfully able to hasten your transformation, but you are going to make a suffer move at -1.
Okay. I think probably my health suffers as a result.
All right. So that goes down to 3. And what does it look like as he's like trying to get this arm headlock on you, and you transform into your form?
I think that Samira starts to bulge, and as he's got an arm very kind of easily around my neck, suddenly it's like he's grasping a tree trunk instead of a neck, and there are now tusks kind of protruding on either side of his face.
Amazing. I think doing that, you have certainly broken free from his grasp. So are they interested in just going straight out the window? Or are you going to take care of business, shall we say, euphemistically, before you proceed out into the water?
I think they're at least going to shove him back, perhaps violently enough that he may injure himself in the process.
Okay. So what I'm trying to decide is if it feels like trying to push him away is like a secure an advantage before you jump out into the water. But I also feel as though in your walrus form, like you're not going to have any issue navigating the like descent into the water.
Mm.
So I don't know that that's the interesting thing here. So maybe it is just another face danger to see if you can push him away. You're going out the window, most likely, regardless of what happens. But I think the question is, like, do you get enough distance that he doesn't have an opportunity to strike at you as you are going out the window?
Yeah. That's a 6 on the die, and I think it would be plus iron, so that would be 9.
Nice.
And then a 2 and a 5, so strong hit.
Strong hit. Okay, so we're going to take +1 momentum, and so you just like, is it like the tail just kind of like bashes him and he like flies across the room through a stack of scrolls and books?
Yeah, I think so. I think there is a sort of prehensile tail situation.
Amazing. And then just turn and in some walrus fashion, like swan dive into the water.
Yeah.
Where Caspian is like, he's treading water down there, just kind of like looking up, wondering what's taking so long. And I think when he sees you emerge from the window in that walrus form, he starts swimming. He's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna,
not gonna ask what happened there.
Yep, I'm not gonna ask questions. I'm just gonna go.
Great.
Cool. So we're both in the water. I think we probably start swimming towards the kiss of death. I am wondering if there is some way that we can bring the kiss of death to us. And I think what I'm going to say is Caspian maybe has like a little bell or something on the ship. And with his mystical abilities, he is able to ring it from a distance, and the crew knows that that's the signal to move, and maybe that ringing gets louder when they're traveling in the direction that Caspian is. And so I'm going to roll plus my sorcerer asset against plus spirit for this to create this effect. That is a strong hit.
Nice.
I will take. So that is +1 momentum. And then because it's a secure and advantage, I get +2 more momentum. So I'm up to 5 and +1 to the next move. And I think that probably the next move is just a face danger with I think plus iron. I think endurance. It's not a matter of speed here. Like we're not gonna. Caspian is not going to outrun news traveling in the garrison. Samira in walrus form probably is fine. Like just it is having a great time in the water. But with endurance, just kind of swimming to get far enough out that the kiss of death can reach us and pick us up. So plus iron, which is +2. +1 for my move, and that is a weak hit. So succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move. I'm going to just take a hit to my spirit. It's exhausting. Like holding on to like the mental concentration, because I think that's the thing, right? He's got to keep that mental focus to keep that bell ringing.
Yeah.
And doing that while also swimming against these waves that are just cascading down and threatening to cast him back into these rocks is incredibly challenging. But we do it. We swim out far enough, and like the sunrise, the kiss of death comes around the corner, the edge, boy, that's just the worst word to use for a sea. Comes around the promontory.
Yeah, that's exactly the word that I was going to suggest.
And so we see the sails, and we see the flag flying, and the kiss of death comes alongside us and picks us up, and we are able to start sailing away from Northbridge. And I think we can mark 2 more boxes of progress on our vow. So we're up to 8 out of 10. I think we can make the journey back. And I don't think we need to roll another set of course on this, because I think we have successfully gotten away cleanly, and there aren't any Regency ships within range of us that are going to be able to overtake us, because the Kiss of Death is a sloop. It's not a huge ship. It's very small, but it is also very fast.
Yeah.
So we are sailing away. We return back to Flotsam with a slightly damp, sorry. Now I'm going to get into the weeds. Here we are near the end, and I'm going to get into the weeds. Does your equipment transform with you into your form? And if so, does that keep the letter dry?
I'd like to think that we have some kind of leather tube or something that we could have slipped the letter into so that it's at least slightly waterproof. But but when with the transformation, I imagine that that Samira's armor just kind of gets absorbed into the blubber. I think it's kind of quite a gross body horror sort of experience to view.
Yep. Okay, cool. So we make it back to Flotsam. We've got the letter. We go to the court proceedings, and Samira presents this letter to the assembled tribunal that is trying Voldar. And this is the point at which we are going to fulfill our vow. And I would like for you to roll the 2 challenge dice, and we're going to compare that against our progress of 8. And how we roll is going to determine how successful our plea is.
Okay.
So no pressure.
2 7s.
So that is a strong hit with an opportunity. So our vow is fulfilled. What does this look like?
I think that for drama's sake, I think perhaps the Dread Court are arguing and perhaps on the verge of executing Voldar. But we burst into the chamber, and Samira's brandishing the letter and goes, No! Stop, we have evidence, and starts to explain with some flourishes and perhaps making us seem more sneaky or more battle-hardened than we actually are, our battle through Northbridge and the information that we've gathered.
Let's have one final scene as the sentence is commuted and Voldar is freed and is cleared of these charges. What does Samira have to say to Voldar in that moment?
I think she says, I know things have not always been calm waters between us, but you are still very important to me, and I could not bear to lose you, even if you are never mine again.
And I think on that wonderful moment, we fade into darkness. And that is the end of our session. Thank you so much, Maddy. This was amazing.
Thank you so much. I had a wonderful time.
Please tell the folks where they can find you again.
You can find me on Blue Sky and Instagram at Maddy is Abstract, and you can find my podcast, A Game of One's Own, wherever good podcasts are found.
Absolutely. And please do go listen to A Game of One's Own. It's phenomenal stuff.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, let's get out of here. And as always, I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.